Okay, so here we have a Year 6 student who has written an essay called The Monster. He's planned it but not timed it. He's early in Year 6, so not quite at his 11 plus exams yet. We'll have a look at his plan first and then look at the essay. So his plan, wow, it's pretty detailed. He's written his shopping list at the top, so VCOP SMAF. He's even done his smiley face to remind him of show don't tell, and then he's listed all of his punctuation. He's done it in paragraphs, so we've got intro and then ending, so he knows where he's starting and where he's finishing, and then paragraph 2, paragraph 3, and he's even given each paragraph a heading so that he knows what's going to happen in each paragraph, what the job of each paragraph is. And that way he can then leave each set of bullet points to describe the action. He's even labelled in the margin everything that he's used, so he knows what he needs to use, what he's already got. Brilliant. All I would say is don't need to write such long sentences in the plan. It can be a lot more note form than that. We don't want to spend too much time. It's just about jotting down ideas. Okay, let's have a look at the story. We'll read it paragraph by paragraph and break it down there. Stooping over me, the foul creature was prepared to plunge his claws into my feeble body. Cowering, I dropped violently to my knees. Like an enormous rusty kitchen mop, his fur flopped constantly. He snarled. Speedily, my poor slim veins began to bulge, as if they were going to burst. As quick as a herd of leopards, I pondered, would this be my last moment? Wow, okay, so we're off to a really good start. We've started with a verb, stooping over me. The foul creature was prepared to plunge his claws into my feeble body. So we've got loads of great verbs, loads of great adjectives, and the opener is really good as well. Starting with another verb here, cowering. Dropped violently, adverb, to my knees. So we've shown what fear is doing to his body. Like an enormous rusty kitchen mop. So we've started with a simile, which is great, but enormous is spelt enormous. And I don't think constantly is quite the right adverb to use there. Maybe his fur flopped limply over his face, but I think constantly isn't quite right. And make sure if we're going to use ellipsis, we do proper 3 dots. Now I really love this. He snarled. Now even though that's a very basic sentence, it really works because we've gone from very long sentences to a short one. So we're varying our rhythm as we go. Speedily, my poor slim veins began to bulge as if they were going to burst. That's a great example of show don't tell. So we're seeing how fear affects the character's body. As quick as a herd of leopards, I pondered, would this be my last moment? Now I like the use of a colon and I like the rhetorical question. I think that's really great. It builds a lot of suspense. But I don't think a herd of leopards, as quick as a herd of leopards, is the right simile to use there. It doesn't work for me. Make sure that leopards is spelled leopards. And I believe that heard in this case, not heard as in I heard a sound, but it would just be heard like that without an A. Okay, next paragraph. Nervously, I ducked the vast swing from his piercing silver claws. Lucky, I thought. Not so lucky next time. I bolted frantically. Malevolently, the monster trailed behind, so I had no reason to halt. Worried, I picked up the pace to an unbeatable speed, which saved me enough valuable time to think. At last, I finally reached the end of the labyrinthine tunnel. Brilliant. Wow. Okay. So we've got an adverb to start here, which is really good. Be careful with presentation because that looks a bit like clucked. I want it to say ducked, which it's supposed to. The vast swing from his piercing silver claws. Now we don't actually need a hyphen there. It would just be piercing, comma, silver claws. And piercing is P-I-E-R-C-I-N-G. And then bolted frantically. That's nice. Be careful with punctuation with the inverted commas here. So I really like giving the thoughts, but make sure, for example, the full stop goes before the inverted comma. Malevolently, the monster trailed behind, so I had no reason to halt. Halt is a great verb, but it's spelt H-A-L-T. Worried, comma, I picked up the pace. That's a nice opener. Picked up the pace to it should be an unbeatable speed. And the U doesn't need to be capital there. which saved me enough valuable time to think. I think it would be really effective here if we used another ellipsis so that we've got a bit of a pause while he's thinking. We can almost imagine, it almost gives the reader time to think. At last I finally reached the end of the labyrinthine tunnel. Now that's a fantastic adjective there, labyrinthine. It means like a labyrinth, like a maze, but just be careful, it is weirdly spelt. It's spelt labyrinthine. So it's got a little confusing Y in there, labyrinthine. Panting constantly, I could hear horribly loud and deep footsteps drawing near. Ferociously, every miniature gust of air was hunting me down like a brutal lion. There was a decaying rotten flesh aroma. Okay, I think it gets confusing here grammatically, but we'll come to that in a second. There was a decaying rotten flesh aroma immediately filled up all the fresh air left. Midnight blackbirds dart and flutter. Freezing raindrops splinter down from dark black clouds, or dark bleak clouds. I can't really read that. But okay, this is a good paragraph. We just need to be careful here because there are some grammatical problems and some issues with phrasing and tense and things like that. So I would say hunting me down like a brutal lion is really effective. That gives you a sense of how the environment is almost causing fear in the character. But I think that's meant to be there was a decaying rotten flesh. And aroma, which is a great word, doesn't have that first A in it. It's aroma. And it means smell. Midnight blackbirds. Now here we could use a dash, a hyphen. Midnight blackbirds, because we're conjoining midnight and black to make an adjective. Dart and flutter. Now this is a problem because we need to have darted and fluttered. We don't want to change tense. Up till now it's all been in past tense and now we're changing to present tense. That is confusing and the examiner would not like that. Freezing raindroplets splinter down from dark bleak clouds. Now that should either be black or bleak is spelt EA. Splinter is a lovely verb. I'm not sure if that one works for droplets, but I don't mind it. It's kind of metaphorical. In fact, I quite like it, even though it seems like an odd one to use. Now we've got a great opener. Silent but agile, I jolted behind the upcoming gnarled tree. Just then, a glinting goblet caught my eye. There were scuzzy bugs crawling all over it, but it had to do. Blasted, I muttered, in complete and utter shock. I love this opener, silent but agile. I think that's really effective. I jolted behind the upcoming. I don't think we need upcoming. I think we could just say behind a tree, and not, or behind a gnarled tree, but the G has to be small case. Just then, comma, a glinting goblet caught my eye. Glinting goblet. Could we say a glint from a glittering goblet or something like that? It still works. I quite like it. But there shouldn't be a comma there. That's a comma splice. Just then a glinting goblet caught my eye, and there were scuzzy bugs crawling all over it. So it should be either a semicolon or some sort of conjunction, like but or and. Blasted, I muttered. Now I think that should either be blast, I muttered, or it should be blast it, rather than blasted, because it's a sort of expression of frustration. Okay, that's looking good. Now let's look at the final, hang on, that's not the right one. Let's look at the final paragraph. Here it is. The monster had seeked me out. Cautiously, I opened up the staggering goblet to discover it was bitter poison. At that moment, my pulse raced, so I glugged it down his throat. He dropped to the floor. Okay, so seeked. Seeked should be sought. So the past tense of seek is sought. Cautiously, comma. We mustn't forget our commas there. And opened it, I think that's meant to be opened. Up the staggering goblet, and that looks like groblet, so just be careful with presentation, to discover it was bitter poison. At that moment, again, we need a comma after the opener there. My pulse raced, so I glugged it down his throat. Now that says glooged, so double G for glugged. And I don't even think glugged is quite the right verb. I think you might glug something yourself, but if you're pouring it down someone else's throat, you could say he forced it down his throat. He dropped to the floor. That should be double P, and we should have some punctuation at the end of a sentence. So maybe we could end on ellipsis, or maybe we could even end on an exclamation mark. Okay, so overall, that's a really great story. I love the ideas in there, and so we just need to talk about some of the things on which we could improve. So let's look at feedback summary. Interpretation, I think we've done really well. I love the ideas. I like the specific ideas, the specific description of the monster, the running around, being chased. I think that's really good. But I think in terms of narrative, we've got a few paragraphs that are kind of doing the same job. There's a lot of running away, and I think maybe we could have a few paragraphs doing more different things. Language, I think, is really great. We've used really good openers and similes and metaphors and adjectives and verbs. The language is the strong point of this essay. I also think the style is particularly good, using short sentences and long sentences, building up suspense, using ellipsis and colons. I think that's really impressive. Where we need to improve the most is the accuracy in presentation. So certain words that were spelt wrong, certain words that weren't clear what they were saying, and punctuation in a few places. So what we really need to do is work on things like tense, making sure that it's all in the same tense, we're not changing randomly halfway through, and making sure that we take more care with punctuation and spelling. But overall, a great job, and I really enjoyed reading it.